Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking about what I think would happen in the event of another war between Israel and Lebanon. My last video was about whether I think a wider war, like a proper war, is going to happen between Israel and Lebanon. The basic answer basically was yes, that almost definitely is going to happen. The what and the when and all that, I haven't really touched on yet. I think there's going to be no big public action or even statements from the United States before the election, the US election, which is in November, because it's just too close. It's like 40 days, I think it is. Sorry about that, late. 40 days out from the US election. Kamala or Joe Biden are not going to, like, suddenly... I mean, obviously it's unlikely anyway, but especially now, they are not going to suddenly be like, this is too far, finally this is too far. It was alright with Palestine. Palestine's, you know, fair game in the US's eyes, but not Lebanon. That's not going to happen because of any sort of indication of instability. Obviously, I think overall, I believe overall, I have this much faith in the American public, which might not be founded, but I do believe that in the end, by the time you get to election day, it would work out better. I think that the educated young votes that you'd get from Kamala or Joe finally taking a stand on the Israeli genocide and now potentially another war, obviously I think that would end up being better for them electorally, but they're liberals, they're very, very scared of any sort of big action. And you know, it's just the conventional wisdom in politics that any type of instability, even if it's ripping the band-aid off for something really good, the textbook sort of says any sort of instability, just avoid it, especially if you're a liberal. They are allergic to any sort of rapid action or instability, any sort of instability. So that wouldn't happen. In terms of possible actions against Lebanon or potential assistance that the US might actually give in any sort of war, when there was an increase in strikes into Israel and much more so into Lebanon earlier on, I think it was earlier this year, the US sent a carrier strike group to... Why are all vehicles so loud? The US sent a carrier strike group off the coast of Lebanon, because it's got a coast a few hundred miles away, and a carrier strike group is basically an army on sea. That's not an exaggeration, I mean that. Like, a small country, their entire army on the sea, because an aircraft carriers now, like US aircraft carriers, one of a kind, they can carry tens of thousands of soldiers, dozens of planes, I think possibly dozens of planes, hundreds of smaller boats. They act basically as docks. These things are so big in the 21st century, so powerful, they can act as docks for hundreds of ships, small ships, medium ships. Dozens of planes can be fully maintained and launched from, obviously, an aircraft carrier. Helicopters, hundreds and hundreds of long-range, medium-range missiles. Pretty sure they've still got a few cannons on those things. Whatever you want, basically whatever you want. It is an entire military base that has the army of a small country on sea. And a carrier strike group is not just the aircraft carrier, it's a whole thing. It's a whole posse of battleships, other ships surrounding it, loads of planes, like, covering all the air above them, loads of drones, probably, well, it's speculated that there's also submarine action going on, but that's more secretive. It's a whole coordinated movement to say America can project a large amount of naval power that can strike inland and project however much military power they want anywhere in the world. They've now coordinated these things to the extent where they can have a carrier strike group anywhere in the world in less than 48 hours. They deploy one of these carrier strike groups a few hundred miles off the coast of Lebanon, and genuinely, I think that the Lebanese army well, not just the Lebanese army, Hezbollah as well, because Hezbollah controls most of Lebanon now, most of the south, and also they kind of control the north. There is an official government of Lebanon that's recognized by the West. They mostly don't really control it anymore. But Hezbollah versus one of these carrier strike groups, I genuinely believe they would be defeated. These things are crazy. The American military, I don't need to tell you, in the 21st century is crazy. So I believe, well, not even I believe, I mean, they've shown, the US has shown that at least in that context, in the event of an escalation between Lebanon and Israel, they are prepared to use a carrier strike group to attack Israel. No, to attack Lebanon, not attack Israel. But obviously, then I think it's basically a no-brainer that at that point, if in this context, I don't see how this context is very different. It was just regular escalation shit then, and it's regular escalation shit now. Although I guess the time is a bit more pressing for Netanyahu. Sort of things are closing in around him domestically. But yeah, I believe that if this fully kicks off, America is going to fire missiles, or just do surveillance with their drones, or just give the Israeli army drones, equipment. Maybe they can refuel and restock Israeli military from a carrier strike group. But there definitely would be some sort of hands-off support, where the whole point is that they can be 500 miles away but do whatever destruction they want. So it'd probably be waiting there, monitoring. They'd probably get targets from Israel, strategically important targets, that they would target. I don't think they'd be doing all the like just carpet bombing civilian shit, because although America doesn't really care about stuff like that, it doesn't make a habit of doing it anymore. One good thing I can say about the American military is that US soldiers themselves doing war crimes, it does seem like that they are genuinely against that now, and there actually is quite good discipline in terms of don't just do war crimes. Because there must have been, I don't know, a genuine sort of political movement, or maybe they found out it was better financially to do that. I don't know what happened, but from Iraq to now, the what's it called, doctrine seems to have changed. But they wouldn't be sending in troops. I very much doubt America will be sending in troops to Israel or Lebanon or Palestine or whatever, but they're going to do that hands-off support, where if Israel is ever territorially threatened by Hezbollah, they could just send like 10 top of the range, massive, extremely precise missiles. Then that would set them back a bit more, let them fight out a bit more as the US referees this, make sure Israel never loses, basically. Not really a referee, but of a biased referee. They're going to sit there in the ocean and make sure Israel doesn't lose. That's basically the stance. That's a good way of putting it. The stance the US will take if this goes into a full-on war is basically a biased referee. That's what they'll do. I think you're going to see a massive wave of protesting and other sort of activism in America after Kamala wins the election, because I think that's going to happen. Because generally under, like, not leftist, but like left-leaning, at least aesthetically, governments, you get proper leftist activism. And it is kind of sad that, like, being anti-genocide is a leftist position, but there you go. Obviously, when election cycles come round, Democrats say, oh, you need to vote for us because of how bad that guy is. And that's sort of like a tactic of keeping, people not being able to demand too much, because they need to get Trump out. They need to stop Trump from winning because of Project 2025. But it's an excuse that Democrats use. But when election cycles are over, for example, under Obama, there was so much pressure when Obama was actually in government. Occupy Wall Street happened when Obama was in government. You got Bernie Sanders out of the Obama presidency because people wanted actual leftist change. So you're going to see in the start of next year, when Kamala takes office, people are going to stop being quiet because of the Republicans. Now she's in government, you can fucking protest her every fucking day. There's going to be a lot of illegal protest, a lot of direct action, because people, especially young people, are so pissed off in America. There's going to be a lot of students doing illegal shit to try and protest. I think you will get some tepid responses out of that, especially after the US sees that Israel tactically isn't the best investment because of how chaotic Netanyahu is, because of how desperate he is to stay in government, because of what I explained last video. He's just going to keep doing this. He's going to just keep attacking other countries, their neighbours, and to a certain point, tactically, that runs out of its value for America. They want stable evil, not like chaotic evil. So I think you'll get next year, because of like genuine instability that you'll start to get in America and genuine civil disobedience that you'll start to see. They will feel pressured, and Kamala's government will feel pressured. Don't ask me what will happen if Trump gets in, but Kamala's government would feel pressured to make some slight concessions and do something to not fully support the Israeli army. I believe, because obviously the UK has set the precedent. They've strutted out and done the first step, and you know, I'll tepidly compliment Keir Starmer for that. They halted, I think, 10%. In terms of amount of different weapons, they halted 10% of the weaponry they gave. That's not 10% by mass or anything, or 10% by money. That's 10% by number of deliveries. So like 70 or so deliveries out of 700 in like a year. I think those were the numbers. I mean, you can check that out. But he's actually done the UK has now done a slight halting, and they said it was just temporary anyway. They didn't say it was permanent halting of weapons to Israel. So it's not completely unprecedented for a Western country to do that anymore, as of a few weeks ago. So I believe America will do something the same, a little symbolic thing. You know, they've obviously chosen some of the least needed and probably either least or most destructive. It depends how they go, because I think Biden suspended some deliveries of specifically it was like one of the biggest types of bombs they send. It was, I can't remember this specific number, it was either 1,000-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs, or 5,000 pound. It was thousands. It was one of these missiles where like even Biden was like, okay, we can let them not have this. There's no need to have a fucking thousands of pounds of explosives, that payload in a bomb, and be still sending it to them when they're doing this with them. So it'll either be that way, so they're not going to give them the most destructive things that they can do the most harm with, or it's going to be the other way, where, and some of those things, it was the case with the UK, where some of these things they don't really need. They're less important, they're less destructive, so you can get away with not sending them these things, but the strategic investment is still there. So probably the same will happen. There'll be some deliveries that will be stopped under the Kamala administration, a symbolic amount. Maybe they'll do the same. Maybe 10%. While you're slowly trying to be like, oh, we're doing something about this. But I don't think they'll move much past there, because at the end of the day, she's in office then. Like, nothing's really gonna happen. Again, like, unless they can get some mad strikes going, some general strikes, but you know, it's 2024, it's not 1924. They're not gonna that's not gonna happen in America. So yeah, in terms of like, because that's it, like, that's the only way you can really like have consequences for a government. Well, the only legal ways, obviously, like, there'll be a lot of rioting and stuff, and that can pressure governments, but in terms of like sustainable things you can do where you don't have to commit a crime to do it, you can just do like a general strike. But there's a reason people don't do general strikes anymore. It's because the capitalist class is very, very adamant that they don't want people to do general strikes anymore. That's why you don't see it, because they don't want you to realize you can do that. So yeah, that's not happening. So they'll just do that. They'll do a little symbolic thing. In terms of the actual battlefield realities, I still don't think Israel would be able to occupy and like fully, decisively win a war with Lebanon. Firstly, Hezbollah, I think you've just left it too long. If Israel wanted to attack Lebanon and actually have it work this time, maybe it would have been a few years ago. But maybe there's no way they could have done it, because a few years ago, the IDF wasn't as developed as they are now. But Hezbollah has over 100,000 rockets in their arsenal. Obviously, these aren't very good rockets. These are rockets, a lot of them are from Iran, some are from Russia. Can be the same thing, really. But they have a lot. They have 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe more rockets. It's hard to tell, but hundreds of thousands. And so they've got that number thing. Israel is more like the technological stuff, but Hezbollah have the numbers. I think the Israeli military isn't really big enough to occupy land like that. It's a lot of tricky mountainous land. I believe Lebanon might be bigger than Israel, just in terms of like actual size. Also, I think population. I think they have more population, but it's around the same. It's not a big difference. I know that Israel has 9 million people. Lebanon is around that, but it's a slight difference. But it takes a lot to occupy a country. Like, it takes a lot of resources to actually occupy a country. It's no laughing matter. Like, well, not, that's the wrong word. Obviously, it's not a laughing matter, but it's no mean feat. Like, yeah, you can kill a lot of their soldiers, but it's actually occupying the country, making sure they don't come back, stamping it out, having you control over that territory, appointing like a new government that's under your control, and stopping it all from unraveling a few months later in a rebellion. 9 million people in Israel, not that many of them in the military. They have 2 years of mandatory military service, but still, 9 million people, that's not a lot to get a military out of. There's quite a problem with, I think, 20%, maybe 30% of the population of Israel, or a particular sect of Judaism, where they're a bit like Quakers. They just do not engage in any military stuff. They literally do not believe, like, it doesn't matter if they'll get jailed. Not supposed to matter if they get killed, actually, theoretically. Anything, they're not fighting a war. And ironically, some of these people are the most nationalist and most militaristic people in Israel. So, you know, I wonder why. But yeah, genuinely a big chunk of the Israeli population, their sect, their views are actually disbar them from being in the military. This year, a few months ago, the Knesset passed a bill that was like, doesn't matter, that you're not exempt, you've still got to do your military service. So that's a big thing. But yeah, there's a lot of things. Public health isn't that good in Israel. Their demographics aren't good. There's a lot of old people, a lot of babies being born. A lot of underlying problems in Israel that have been like the root causes of this, causes quote unquote, because the cause is Netanyahu being a psycho, and also Hamas being psychos. But in terms of like why Netanyahu isn't popular and why there's a lot of discontent in Israel before October 7th last year, one of the reasons was bad demographics. Not a lot of babies being born in Israel. They're not sure what they're going to do. Population aging more than it is in like every country basically, but it's a particular problem there. So there are a lot of young fit men who are at least semi-willing to fight. So just based off I mean, I'm not a military guy, but just based off the overall broad numbers, it seems like it would just be one of them, you know, like another Middle East war where it just goes on, it keeps going on, grinding. Obviously, Israel would get some territory. I think the Israeli army is powerful enough, just especially backed by America, and with all the amazing technology they have, Israel would obviously take some land. Maybe they'd take the southern half. Maybe they'd say they're doing an anti-terrorist operation because Hezbollah controls mostly the south of Lebanon. So maybe they'd say they're kicking out Hezbollah. We're not invading Lebanon. The Lebanese government can still go in the north of Lebanon, but we're just invading, you know, the southern half. So maybe they would just raise that to the ground, because the thing is, it's what's hard to occupy isn't the land itself, it's the population. I should have been more specific before. It's hard to occupy the population. But if there's no people there, it doesn't matter. It's like Palestine, where like they don't really need to occupy them if they just kill them all, which is kind of so fucking bleak, but it's true. And in Lebanon, they wouldn't do that. They're not able to. They don't surround them. They can't hem them in like they could with Gaza. But what they'd probably do is just raise it to the ground, cause so much destruction, bomb so much that everyone in the south of Lebanon who isn't dead just has to go to the north. There's no way, even if you're brave, even if you want to stay there, you just can't. You just cannot stay there. And then when you've got southern Lebanon as an empty wasteland, then they occupy the wasteland. Cheaper land prices, try and get more people to come to Israel, get the population up, you know, and everything sort of, a lot of the prices go down because everyone's more spaced out. Not exactly how things work, but that's probably what he's thinking. So that'll probably be it. There'll be no big sweeping overall victory for Israel. I think even with tepid US support, if the US decided to go, yeah, we're all in on this, fuck Lebanon, then obviously they'd win. But then also, like, there would be unbelievable discontent in America, unbelievable rioting in America. So that would happen. But I think there'll be tepid US support. Israel will kind of win in the sense that they took more land than Lebanon took, but they won't win as in, like, they're not going to take the entirety, they're not going to conquer Lebanon. So that'll be what it is, and then they'll probably carry on, you know, for another fucking 20 years, and then in 20 years they'll take the whole of Lebanon or something like that, or it'll be Syria next, or it'll be the west of Palestine, the West Bank. Not the west. It is, ironically, it's in the east, but it's the West Bank because of, I think it's the West Bank of a particular river, maybe the Euphrates. But yeah, doesn't really matter. But I feel like that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So to summarise, tepid US support militarily, the carrier strike group. Fuck up southern Lebanon. Probably occupy southern Lebanon, move everyone into the north. Kamala next year will have some tepid stopping, and no one's going to be happy, basically. All right, see ya.